with CSEC right around the corner, you have been studied, you have been reviewing your content notes, and as such, we're going to be taking a look at some of the past paper questions. So we're starting off with 2022, and we're going to be focusing on questions 1, 2, and 3. So the first question is asking us to define the term lifestyle disease. And then the second part of that question is asking us to name 2 lifestyle diseases that can negatively impact the health of persons in the Caribbean. So this one is a 2-part question. Now, to define the term lifestyle disease, it refers to any medical condition or ailment that is caused due to the way how an individual chooses to live his or her life. And then, of course, you know that there are certain factors that may cause one to develop a lifestyle disease. And some of these would include things like poor nutrition, lack of exercise, excessive alcohol use, and smoking. To answer the second part of the question, where it asks you to name 2 lifestyle diseases, I have given you numerous options here, so you can select from obesity, cancer, hypertension, diabetes mellitus, anorexia, which is a eating disorder, hypertension, and heart disease. So any 2 of these responses would have awarded you the full marks for that question. Moving on to question 1B. So it says, state 2 factors other than the level of activity, pregnancy, and lactation that can influence eating patterns and dietary choices in the Caribbean. Now let's take a look at some of the possible responses. So factors that can influence eating patterns and dietary choices would include health concerns. Now, as you know, someone who is health conscious or someone who may be battling with an ailment or a disease will have a different dietary need than someone who may be considered to be of perfect health. Another factor would be age. Let's take, for example, older adults. They would generally have a lower calorie need than younger children, like, let's say, for example, a preschooler or a toddler. So the adults would tend to consume less energy-dense foods such as sweets and fast foods, and they would focus mostly on eating a meal rich in fruits, vegetables, and grains. Religion is another factor that would influence eating pattern and dietary choices, because as you know, there are some religions that have strict rules and restrictions as to certain types of foods that should be avoided, or they may have a specific time frame as to when certain types of foods can be eaten. Occupation and gender are also factors, and personal preference, of course, would be another factor. So any 2 of these responses would give you your marks for that question. All right, the next question is asking us to explain how the following factors would lead to changes in dietary needs. And the factors that they would have listed there would have been level of activity and pregnancy and lactation. All right, so let's start off by using level of activity. So the more active an individual gets, the more calories they will burn. So to meet their energy needs, they will need to alter their diet to include more proteins, carbohydrates, healthy fats, and water. On the other hand, someone who is less active, for example, a sedentary worker, will not require as much calories. So basically, to summarize, all this is saying is that the more active the individual is, the more energy-rich foods they will require. So someone who is not as active, for example, an office worker, will not require foods that are high in energy because they are not moving about as much. Let's move on to pregnancy and lactation. So it says both conditions require additional nutrients for the developing fetus as well as for milk production in the case of the lactating mother. So the lactating mother is a woman who is now breastfeeding her child. So not only are pregnant women supplying nutrients for the growing fetus, but they are also preparing for the delivery of the baby. And the breastfeeding women, they tend to burn a lot of calories during feeding sessions, and as such, a balanced diet is encouraged. Question 1C, discuss 2 factors that may threaten the food security of elderly persons within a community. Alright, so the 2 factors I would have selected here would have been natural disasters and low socioeconomic status. As it relates to natural disasters, it says that natural disasters such as hurricanes, especially in the Caribbean, can halt the production of crops as well as destroy them, thus reducing the amount of food available for the elderly. And natural disasters, we know we get them quite often in the Caribbean, and usually around this time, it is harder for us to get certain food items. So this would affect the elderly in that regard. In terms of low socioeconomic status, it says those with a low income or those who have financial difficulties will find it challenging to access healthy foods, as these are oftentimes more expensive. And especially in this current time that we are in, we find that foods that are healthier for us tend to be way more expensive than those items that have a low nutritional value. All right, moving on to question 2, it says state 2 functions of food in the body, and I went ahead and I gave you 4 options. So the first option is it provides the body with energy. Next, it helps with the development of strong bones, muscles, and teeth. It also helps the brain to grow and function properly. And then finally, it aids in the repair and healing of injuries. Next question, name the deficiency disease that could occur as a result of an inappropriate intake of each of the following nutrients. So the nutrients they would have listed, I have written them in black font. So the first one, vitamin A, the deficiency disease for that one is night blindness. Next we have vitamin C, and the deficiency disease for that one is scurvy. Iron, the disease associated to that one is anemia, or you could also put iron deficiency anemia. And then for iodine, the disease there would be goiter. Alright, this next question says that Kendra is an anemic adolescent who has planned the following breakfast menu. So for breakfast, Kendra is having chocolate milk, callaloo spinach and scrambled eggs, toasted bread, and coffee. So the question says, suggest 3 adjustments that should be made to the menu above based on Kendra's condition. So the first adjustment, Kendra could replace the callaloo and scrambled eggs with a heme iron source such as offals, for example, kidney or liver. Second adjustment, Kendra could replace the chocolate milk with fruit juice or juice made from beetroot or green vegetables. And then third, she could replace the coffee with ginger tea. Now, of course, CSEC wants reasoning for the answers we would have just provided. So for the first one, it says, while plant sources such as callaloo and spinach provide energy, heme iron, which are obtained from heme sources such as meat, fish, and seafood, they tend to provide more energy, and the body absorbs most of the energy from these sources. For the second adjustment, which would have suggested that she should replace the milk with a fruit juice or a beetroot juice, the reasoning behind that is that drinking citrus juice and other foods that are high in vitamin C while eating high iron foods can increase the body absorption of iron. And to add to that reason, calcium actually inhibits the absorption of iron. So actually consuming the vegetable juice or the fruit juice would be a better alternative. And then reason number 3, which would be swapping out the coffee for ginger tea. It says here that coffee inhibits iron absorption. Ginger, on the other hand, is used in treating and preventing anemia, and as such, ginger tea would be a better alternative. Question 2D. G2 recently suffered a stroke as a result of hypertension and heart disease. He was also diagnosed with diabetes. It says here to plan a lunch menu which is suitable for G2. Alright, so G2 has a lot going on for him, but we still have to plan the menu for him just the same. So we want to keep a few things in mind. So we need to know that G2 needs a good quantity of proteins. He would need lots of vegetables, and he would need fruits as well. And he would need these for the repair of his body tissues and to prevent any further mishaps, because, you know, he has a lot going on already. So along with eating a lot of vegetables, he needs to avoid processed foods, avoid saturated fats, and just have a balanced, well-rounded meal. Option number 1 for G2 is a chicken stir fry with vegetables, and he would have that with steamed brown rice and a glass of water. Option number 2, he could have grilled salmon, he could have quinoa and black bean salad, and then he would end that off with a glass of beetroot juice. So it's not a whole lot, but it is balanced enough for him to get all the nutrients that he would need for his recovery. Next question, state 3 guidelines you would give your mother to assist her in planning meals for your grandmother who is ill. So the first suggestion here would be to choose foods with little to no added sugar, saturated fats, and sodium. Guideline number 2, meals must be cooked by the most easily digested methods such as boiling, stewing, and steaming. Remember that persons who are older, the elderly, tend to have digestive problems. Some may have issues with chewing and swallowing. Guideline number 3, plan balanced meals. Allow her to have foods from each food group to help reduce the risk of developing diseases. And then as a bonus, reduce the amount of sodium used in meals. Rather than using powdered seasoning, she could use natural seasonings and herbs to add flavor to the food. Next question, suggest 3 reasons why the amount of time available must be considered when planning meals for a family. Now, one of the first reasons is that it reduces impulse shopping. Now, in case you're wondering, impulsive shopping would mean that you would have purchased something that you weren't initially planning on purchasing. So if it was not planned for in your budget ahead of time, it would be considered as an impulsive buy. Number 2 would be that it fosters time for family bonding time. And number 3, it allows for consideration for healthy food and variety. Your class is going on a field trip and all students are required to take packed lunches. Suggest 3 guidelines that these students should follow when packing their meals. State 1 reason for each guideline suggested. Alright, so the first guideline is to ensure that before the lunches are prepared and packed, your hands are washed. Hand washing is one of the first steps to ensure that there is no contamination or transfer of bacteria or any harmful microorganisms. Number 2, pack only the amount of perishable food that will be eaten. Now, as you know, if you're going to be preparing a packed lunch, you tend to want to stay away from foods that are going to be spoiled easily. Or if you are to pack foods that would, tend to go bad after a while, you want to ensure that you only pack the amount that you will need. One of the reasons for this is that in the case where there are leftovers, it may be difficult or it might be of an inconvenience to you if you are to carry home that amount of food and ensure that it is stored properly so that by the time you get home, it won't be spoiled. Number 3, the lunch can be prepared from the night before and then stored in the refrigerator. Now, as you know, if you prepare the lunch from overnight or ahead of time and store it in the refrigerator, it will remain cold for a period of time while you travel to your destination. So that is also an option. Number 4, keep cold foods cold and hot foods hot. Temperature and proper storage is important when you're considering a packed lunch. In the case of hot foods, you can use an insulated container to keep the temperature of the food item. Some of them give you the option of filling it with hot water, the container that is. So fill the container with hot water, let it sit for a while, empty it, and then you will fill it with the hot food. And of course, you'd want to close your container and try to keep it closed until you are ready to eat it. So that will keep the food hot. As it relates to cold food, you can travel with an ice pack. So the ice pack can be placed in the freezer from the night before. Then you can place it in your lunch bag and you can rest your lunch on top of that. And the final guideline would be to pack plenty of water. And of course, the main purpose of this is to ensure that you stay hydrated while you're on the field trip. And the final question for this section number 3, it says to write a suitable menu for the packed meal that you would take on the field trip. So for this field trip, I felt like taking along with me fruit kebabs, chicken and vegetable wrap, you know, a little trail mix, pineapple juice, and of course water. So we have a good mix of fruits and vegetables, we have our proteins, we have our citrus juice, and we have our water, of course. And these are all foods that are easy to eat and don't require a lot of preparation while we're going to actually have the meal. So this would be an ideal menu. Okay, so that's it for the first half of this exam paper. I hope you found this video helpful. Stay tuned for more videos and happy studying.